Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with me, Anne Welsh. Today's guest is NJ. He's the chairman of the African Energy Chambers, and he's the author of several books and CEO of a corporate law firm. And what inspires me about NJ is his passion for Africa. He's dedicated most of his work in the African region. And today I'll be talking to you about what it means to what pain the Africans are going through with the low oil price. Join my guest, meet NJ.
If we don't promote growth and capitalism and those values, it's not capitalism the way you see, we are never going to take our resources and be real stewards of our resources. We are going to always wait on others to come invest, and we are at the begging end. It's time for us to be real stewards of our resources and drive it up. So
certainly there's going to be a big potential for renewables. That is, Africa is seeing an energy transition right now. So you're going to see a lot of talk and opportunities for renewables from East Africa. Don't forget, you have the Turkana in Kenya. It's one of the largest renewable energy project in the continent. It's going to do about 450 megawatts when that is done. In Nigeria, you see new projects. In South Africa, you're seeing things coming up. And you're even looking at in Senegal, they have some really great potential, but a lot still needs to be done with technology. And this is actually a big opportunity for Africa to play, especially young Africans that really want to provide energy to so many.
I don't think it is a cartel. I think it is a group of people coming together, because a cartel is when you have a price target. OPEC has no price target. OPEC just has a sense to say the market is at a position where we are suffering domestically, but we have to do something. So sitting together and discussing these policies, but there's never has been an OPEC resolution that says we have a price target at $90 or $100 or $200. That has never been the objective of OPEC. So I think when you look at the United States, there's a lot of communications and there's a lot of discussion on this, and they say, well, it's a cartel. And if you phrase it that way, then most people just buy into it. But I think there is never a price target with OPEC.
Welcome again, everyone, to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself, Anne Welsh. As I previously mentioned, I've got the chief executive, the corporate lawyer, NJ, with me. And the reason, as a lot of you might ask, why have I reached out to him to have this conversation? He's doing so much work in Africa. And one of the things you might not know is that in Africa and currently in the rest of the world, we're all being affected by the oil price. The oil price right now is low, and NJ in his own world is making a big difference to that, making a big difference to help countries to change their voices and the way they utilize oil and find other diversification method. NJ, thank you so much for joining me today in this platform. I know how busy you are. I was actually quite nervous to reach out to you because I understand you're a very busy person. But before I start, could you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Thank you, Anne. And I'm so happy that you reached out, and I'm so happy to be talking to you. I think your story has inspired a lot of us. And I think the idea of that people, I think the first time I met you, I knew nothing about you. And you told me bits and pieces later when I met you again in London during the conference. And having read your book, and I think it tells of not just your story, but being able to put yourself out there and really tell a story that inspires a generation of not women, but men, that they can overcome and still overwhelm and still do very well professionally and personally and still be in a good state. And I think you might not know what you have done, but you put yourself to really drive others. So
thank you.
Thank you for really doing that, because most people who have gone through what you've gone through, seen the setbacks, seen everything, they lack the ability to get through that. And for me, I would say I'm a low country boy. I was born in a small city in Cameroon. I think you big city folks in London would call it a village. It would not even be called
Absolutely not. I think it's so big out there.
we call it a city. We call it a city,
Yeah.
but we still call it a village. But we happy. I mean, grew up in a community with loving people, big community together, and parents work as teachers in a religious school. So you end up being shaped by certain kind of values, certain kind of ways of doing things. And you had a mom who was a disciplinarian, I would say, coupled with my grandma, who spent some of the earliest years and just showed so much love. And I would say my grandma didn't study biology and zoology, but she knew stickology and she knew slapology. And one of it had to work with whatever we did. But I would think I was one of the few in my community and Africans, when you look at it on the larger scale, to have had a chance to go to Europe and then to the United States, had a great education opportunities that a lot of people don't have. And for me, when you look at that, the one thing you got to ask yourself is, how do you give back? And how do you really use those God-given talents and skills to reach out to Africa? And I came back and I built a law firm at home. Today, we have about 160 lawyers working across Africa for Centurion. But I think the biggest gift that everything has given me is my wife and my two kids. And I think that they have shaped me in ways that I would have never have thought. You know, friends who knew I was a roughneck. I ran the streets. I played ball. But I think right now my kids run my life. And I think some people say they've made me a better person. And I would like to accept that. I don't know, but I think the work we do every day, it's about making others better person for themselves. So really thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, no, absolutely. I'm so delighted that you took the time out to join me, because even myself, the first time I met you, I remember you were doing this big events in London, bringing the energy and ministers and oil and gas ministers. And, you know, and you really will have, from day one, have always been there to be that spokesperson. But what's your story in that energy sector? What's that love? How did you get into that? What's your passion about it?
My passion about, I didn't study oil and gas law in law school. I teach it today. I lecture about it today. I write about it today. I did oil and gas in law school. And most young people ask me, like, what course should I take? I was actually studying to be a human rights lawyer. I know it comes as a shock to people. I had been inspired when I was a kid in Germany by some guys from Nigeria, actually. And they talked to me about when Nigeria was under General Abacha. They talked to me about President Obasanjo being in jail. They talked to me about Beko Kuti being in jail. And they explained those things to me. And so it forced me to think a lot about being an activist and how are you going to change society. And so I was this little young kid going out there protesting and everything. But that was good. Coming into energy, I had a chance to have a job in the United Nations. And I worked in Sudan. In the early 2000s, Sudan was going through some really big issues with the Darfur crisis. I work in the rule of law department, and we were dealing with issues in South Kordofan, we're dealing with issues in Nyala, El Fasher, and I started to realize that most of Africa's problems were all based on its natural resources. It's agricultural land and what is under that land. And then for me, it started to say, if you really want to be part of that generation of Africans that are really going to change things are really going to make an impact, you have to look at where the problem is. Stop running away from the problem. Deal with it. So I had to go educate myself again. I actually did an MBA after I had my law degree to really start personally training myself about the oil and gas industry. And I said, okay, I will learn the ropes. I would understand the industry. I would work with the so-called bad guys or the big oil or anybody. I work with everybody. Half knowledge, half understanding, but then be part of that generation that has to make this industry work for everyday Africans. Because everyday Africans dismiss the natural resource industry because of all the stories, some of them true, some of them not, but there's been a lot of abuse in this industry that makes it very difficult for people to feel like they got to tune in, they want to be part of. And I think that is the essential problem we find in the oil and gas industry. So what happens today? More young people want to work for Amazon and not Chevron.
No.
People want to work for Google and not Exxon. So you see that stuff, but it's a beautiful industry, and I felt get in there, work hard, fix it, bring Africans in, and drive an African narrative that we do matter in this industry. It is our resources. Let it work for people like my grandmother that never ever thought about meeting somebody in high positions.
Wow. I didn't even think about it that way, because there's that drive where the young people are now moving away from the oil and gas because probably it's not as attractive as it used to be. But one of my biggest concern in oil and gas sector is that there are the social and economic challenges for people in Africa that rely on it. And so many people have spent their years of Africa since our independence. We've continued that social and independent reliance. What advice and what are you seeing that can change that to help them in crisis situation?
I think in crisis situation, we tend to start looking at what we did wrong, how not prepare, and that has been the consummate story of Africa. We have one crisis after another, and we say we got to prepare for the next one. And when this one is over, we get back, we go to bed, and we think it's okay. But what we do, we forget is that everyday people, they continue to live in difficult straits, and they feel like the elite in the continent across Africa are failing them. They also feel like the industries that they care their resources are failing them. So when you look at preparing socially, it comes with jobs. It comes with the right kind of facilities. It comes with the right kind of also leadership that basically talks to most of the citizens. It's okay. It's okay, because some of us just need to look at this leadership that tells us, gives us confidence, gives us pride in what we do, and that go ahead. I mean, social workers, health workers are there right now really leading us through this. It's good for me to talk to my friends who are politicians, the business leaders, but the real leaders and the real heroes and champions right now is that firefighter, is that social worker, is that health worker, that they are putting themselves out there. They get the lowest amount of pay. They go out, they do really all the work. They leave their kids in the morning, don't know if they will come back, maybe contracting the virus. But they just go in, day out. These are people whom I think should be the leaders of tomorrow, because they bring a sense of compassion in our industry. They bring a sense of compassion in our society that's for a long time eluded us.
Okay, you're a businessman, and that's one thing that fascinates me about you. You're not just a lawyer, but you also bring your own passion to what you do. I think that's one, and that's why you see a lot of lawyers in the oil and gas field, but there's very few of you who are really out there making changes. What have been your biggest challenge along the way to get to where you are today?
I think the biggest challenge has always been getting that door open. get their multifaceted reasons. When you come in there, you are not seen as you qualified, and then when you are qualified, you come from the right region and in a certain way, and they don't really bring that up to you. But I think the biggest thing for me when you look at it, beyond when people would cite, I don't let things hold me back like race or ethnicity or anything. I just keep going because, I always say, yes, I don't believe in failure. Setbacks, you would have them, but you have to continue pushing. And when you look at that, take, for example, you walk in different countries, you are going to see people behave differently. You have conservative oil and gas establishment that did not prepare itself for people like me or you or many other Africans to be part of it. You have an elitist African establishment that maybe would believe that it is their time. And you have a business crowd saying, let us in, find a way for us to be part. And you have a population, and you have to figure out how to pierce through all of that without necessarily being antagonizing to everybody. And that's what led me to always say, I'm going to be a bridge builder. I'm going to bring people together, but I'm going to have my core values, my core principles, because I know where I come from. I know what it takes for grandma to walk me into the market, knowing that all she's going out there to sell she was going to sell agricultural products that would maybe, when I think about it, she would make no more than, on a whole Saturday, she would not make no more than $10. But she would spend the whole week walking in her farm to try to get something. And then on Saturday, she would carry this on your head. We go to the market. She would make no more than $10. So I know, I always remember my grandmother. I always remember those people. So you look at that faith, that passion, that drive, and that ability to keep going. And when you look at all what the roadblocks are in the industry and where you go, I ignore it. I said, keep going. Keep going. They are going to come at you. They're going to shout at you. They're going to push you. But if you stop, then you've basically stopped telling an African story, because there are many people who grew up in the same circumstances or worse off than I did. And if they see where I am today and what I'm doing, they need to see that story. But also, they need to understand my challenges, my obstacles. And yes, I do cry. When he hits me sometimes, I get back out of the room. I cannot cry, but then I like to listen to Fat Joe. He says, lean back a little bit, and I come right back in, ready to punch and ready to go. But that is what makes us who we are, because I think we need to have a certain sense of compassion. But just say, you keep struggling, you keep going, because this industry, it wasn't shaped for us. We were shaped to be at the door. But now we are fighting to get ourselves on the discussion table. And that is what it is today. And we need to pay a lot of attention to these changes.
So NJ, if you're to say there's a young man looking out to you, a young lady, and she wants to be you, she's just absolutely confused, she's seeing you, you've done very well, successful. What 5 steps in your life would you say these are the 5 things that you need to have to get to that level? What would you say?
Read everything. Education, education, education. Education busts me out of poverty. Get education. It doesn't matter what kind of education. 1, education, and get that. Number 2, you got to get some discipline. That ability to be able to say, I'm going to get up at 4:30 and go for it. And that is so important. That personal discipline. Before you try to look at what waits you, I always think that personal discipline component is really, really important, because that's you working on yourself. That you really saying that I want to do this. The third aspect I would say, and I always try to drive that with me, is that believe in thyself when no one else will. You have to really start believing in your goals, your aspirations, your ambitions. Number 4, I would say learn from others and travel the road less traveled. we are people who are not shaped to go the road that everybody goes. I mean, my firm, the first office was opened in Equatorial Guinea, small African country, spoke only Spanish, but right now we expanded all across the continent. Go the road less traveled. It's so important. And lastly, I would say stay humble. Just stay humble, because I've seen that with a lot of very good brothers. The minute they make the first $1 million or the first $500,000 and everything, you know, there is a Porsche Cayenne, there is a Maserati, the new girlfriend or new wife, there is the big house, they move away. They don't even fly business class anymore. They start worrying about flying first class and private jets and everything. And I think when you get into that, it speaks of a poverty and ambition. And we need to, and with that, you just get into the stereotype where we tend to plague into this soft bigotry of low expectation. So that is my advice. Our advice.
That's amazing. Oh, that's amazing. You've traveled across Africa. I know you've been in the across the world as well. But Africa is like almost your baby. You know it inside out. Especially the oil and gas countries that are naturally producing oil and gas. You know, Angola, Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea. You name it, you know it. There's still a gap when you compare us to the West. There is a gap with we're making so much, but yet seeing very little. As an oil, you know, you're in the legal side. What can we do to change how we produce an oil and start making good use of our natural resources?
It's the most faceted of things, but we got to get back to the drawing board. You know, we got to change the way our contracts are being done. I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying this from people in the industry and people in the government, but we change it. You got to look at where you've gotten successful. In the Middle East, for example, they do not have what you call production sharing contracts, where the oil companies own the resources. They give the government 20% or 10% of the share. In some places, the government just get taxes and royalties. The companies take everything. In Africa, that's what happens. In the Middle East, the blocks are owned by the government. State owns it, or you can give it to the people, like in the United States. And then the International Oil Company is a service company. It's a service contractor. So you perform your service, you get a premium, and that's it. You're out. But also the other thing we have to look at it, and that's why when you see there was so much pain, so much dismay, so much hurt with the oil price crash, is you got to ask yourself, what caused the oil price crash? Yes, the two reasons. The coronavirus, people get hit in their demand in China and India slowed down. So the whole world is selling their products to India and China just because of the manufacturing basis and everything. So people say, well, the Saudis and the Russians were fighting, but India and China control a big part of the market. What does India do with all our oil and our gas? What does China do with our oil and our gas? Those are the questions that we have to start asking. They use our oil and our gas and build manufacturing plants and give jobs to their people. They build petrochemical facilities, urea, ammonia, NPK, fertilizer plants. They create and build agricultural bases and ship some of that food to us. Now, we are a continent with 850 million people with no access to electricity. Out of 1 billion people, I wrote a book, Billions of Play. 850 million people have no access to electricity. So that already tells you, with 1 billion, we can shape the oil price, we can shape the oil market, we can shape how the oil industry really benefits our people. Of course, people have the right to be angry. Of course, people have the right to not trust this industry, not feel like we in the oil and gas industry are speaking to them. Because when you have 850 million people, they are dealing with energy, what we call energy poverty, no access to any kind of power, They are in the dark. I think that's the clarion call that this industry, we all have to look at. That is 850 million big marketing powerhouse. Imagine getting cell phones and everything this way. The European Union is 300 million. And see what they're doing. We are 1 billion, 850 million are in the dark. And so if you start saying, let's transform the game right now. We're going to build fertilizer plants and NPK plants. These fertilizer plants, we boost our agricultural base in Africa. So we stop importing food. I mean, I bought plantains a few days ago. It came from Ecuador, you know. And yes, we're buying plantains from Ecuador. We're buying beef from Europe, and we're importing food from China, and we're getting agricultural supplies from the United States when we have gas in Africa. And then we can build different kind of things and really power Africa. So if we don't really approach and change the way we want to engage the industry and engage our people, we are going to have a constant problem on how it drives, because we're not driving the market. We need to come together as Africans and try and have an African agenda and stick to it. And go to just go to the African Union, adopt it, and say, let's drive it. But also one thing I'm going to mention to you, Anne, we need to let Africans travel in Africa. It's easy for my friends with a foreign passport to land in many African countries than another friend with an African passport, or you have friends with a Nigerian passport. They need a visa to go anywhere. But these are the most prosperous, most hardworking, entrepreneurial Africans, which you find in a country like Nigeria with resources, but then we can't even give them a visa to travel, to power or develop or drive up Africa. That is the clarion call for today, and we need to really pay attention to that.
Wow, that's really true though. In light of coronavirus, I mean, that must have affected the oil and gas sector. What would your advice be to companies that you're looking that not just companies, countries as well? What would you tell them about how to deal with the challenge that this new world is going to present? The low oil prices might stay for a while, and the challenges that the country that has, I mean, everyone on the continent has really suffered in one way or the other. What would your advice be to countries and companies, especially companies looking to come back into Africa to invest, but might be so nervous because the oil price is so low? What would you just say to them?
The market is going to get better. You know, bold. Africa is still the most untapped place. I mean, Nigeria right now is opening a marginal field licensing round. It's going to work really well for them. They are going to have more indigenous people, companies, developing their resources, and around Africa, you're seeing that. Africa is still one of the highest when you look at discoveries. The big discoveries that happen in Africa. Whoever thought in this industry that you would have big discoveries in Mozambique, in Tanzania, and in Senegal? You know, you're having these amazing discoveries coming out there. And then even with difficult markets and places where nobody ever thought you could find oil, like Uganda, it is happening. And that is really what is going to show. So there is a lot of deals that are happening right now. A lot of good things are happening right now. And I think that is really what is going to make Africa really a place to invest. But again, I think the second part of your question, when you look at government, we need to be very careful. I think governments need to be able to measure the pulse of investors and their citizens. And really, this is time to be bold. This is time to cut some bureaucratic red tape and make things happen. Small businesses, especially foreign businesses or African businesses, do not have the chance to deal with the bureaucratic red tape. We need to give incentive, because, and I tell you something, we are not competing. Let's say a country like Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Congo, Nigeria, you're not competing just with Angola or Zimbabwe. You're competing with countries like Suriname and Guyana that are seeing massive, big discoveries. You're competing with some of the most aggressive hardworking guys in the American shale revolution that are doing so well and working so hard with an enabling environment. So we need to create an enabling environment so that business can happen, but also hire the right kind of consultants. Our industry has been plagued. We are not driving a narrative on what needs to happen. We have been stuck. And you know this very well, Anne.
Absolutely.
We have been having consultants, especially people in the public relations environment, that don't tell our story. They look at us and say, you people, or these kind of people. So you ask me a question about challenges. I walk in a room and they say, these kind of people. And they say, us versus them. Who is the us and who is them? And so you need to bring in people, Africans, tap into the African diaspora, who can be able to look at your story and tell your story. Because if you don't tell your story, what you have in your country, what the unique qualities besides oil and gas, and what it's unique to be there at that age, the insurance companies, the marketing companies, the oil companies will have that bad reputation about who you really are, and your story is not going to be told. And if you don't tell our story, somebody else is going to tell our story. And we know what happened when they tell our story. It has not always been good to us Africans. Start with that. It's time to be bold. So hire them, pay them. And this is something which, you know, we have to take a self-assessment. We need to pay people. Pay them. Don't expect that when you have the African from diaspora or the African in Africa, and you say it's a patriotic duty, I'm not going to pay you, just do the job because you're my brother, you're my sister. Those people got bills to pay too. But have somebody come from Europe or America, you quick to write their check. And you say, no, I don't want to piss them off and everything. So we need to be bold. There are a lot of things. It's not just about having the right kind of oil contract. There are a lot of things that come all around dealing with the community. This is time to prepare, to fix those things, create that environment so that when this pandemic is over, we could see investment flowing in. Let's use this pandemic as a preparation, as practice to get us there, because those who prepare, those who get their message out, those who make a concerted effort during these difficult times to brand their country, brand their industry, and shape it the way they want to go, they are going to reap the benefits post-pandemic, because the Americans industry is suffering. They're going to be looking at new places to invest. The Chinese are going to be looking at new places to invest. The Europeans and the Russians, and they're all looking at coming down to Africa. If you don't position yourself, then you are going to be on the last and on the receiving end on all the hits.
Wow. No, absolutely. I absolutely agree. I think the telling of the story is so important, because else the narrative will be whatever people want it to be. Not one of encouragement, not one of motivating one to come to our continent to really invest, because the opportunities are there. But when the narrative are not told accordingly, it misses the translation, and then our continent suffers again. I'm rounding up, but there's this critical question I wanted to ask you. You know, are citizens of African hydrocarbon producing countries aware of the difficulties it is to achieve a sustainable business? What would you say to that?
I would say it's 50-50. Tough. It is tough, because when you start from the personal responsibility standpoint, we have to run better businesses. Okay, we just have to run better businesses. We have to cut out our egos and say, oh my God, I've got an oil contract, so I'm the next billionaire. No, we need to get right back in and say, I am going to run a business in a tough environment, the same way I would do in cacao, the same way I would do in coffee. But also, leadership has to educate its people. We have to, it's not enough to just educate a group of ministers or people in an elite crowd. You have to really find ways to tell the people what oil is. I meet a lot of African leaders most of the time, and I tell them, Mr. President, You have to tell the people to not quit their day jobs, to not quit your jobs at the farm because you're dreaming of oil, to not quit your job as a mechanic, as a carpenter, as a welder. Oil is an addition, not a subtraction. But also, citizens, we as African people, we need to start asking ourselves, what are the opportunities? Yes, they are highly skilled opportunities like being geologists and petroleum engineers and everything. But now, especially young people, if you run a good business and you are disciplined with energy poverty, and by the way, climate change is real. We have to embrace it. But with energy transition, which we are going to face, this is your time to act. This is your time to use your God-given technological skills to really build those apps and build those tech companies that is going to drive Africa's renewable energy revolution. It's going to drive that solar and that wind and that thermal and everything. This is when you have to come together and say, it's nice for us to go out there and listen to Davido and start popping our fingers and shaking our behinds, but we need to get back together and really say, before somebody else takes a massive amount of opportunities, let's take our companies, let's brand it, let's know what it's not there. Let's call different brothers and sisters to put our financial statements and accounting statements together, and let's go talk to the banks. And yes, that is part of where we don't understand how difficult it is. I go to the bank, I fail. That's fine. Lessons of failing at the bank are the most important lessons I get out. They'll tell me, because that's free advice. They'll say, no, we don't like this about your business plan. We don't like, we can't give you money. So by the time I'm done with that testing, when I walk into Ann Welsh's private equity fund and I say, Ann, listen, I'm coming after you. I already got all the loopholes closed. Because I knew what the other guy didn't do for me. But they're ready. We have to be ready. Because if we're not ready, in 5 years, in 10 years, we are still going to be working for somebody else, and somebody else is going to drive that narrative that Africans only want aid, we want to beg, we don't want to pull up our bootstraps. And again, I still go back to your story after reading your book, and I said, you need to sign it, by the way, when I meet you next time.
Absolutely.
Somebody's, just like what you did, somebody's perception of us do not have to become our reality. So we have to change that perception. They would always get perception. Everybody had the perception of what you do, how you going to do. You say, I'm going to change it. Same with me. People had a different perception and said, I'm going to change it. I'm going to work hard. So when you get out there and say, oh man, that's just an oil guy, I said, let my deed speak for itself. Let my work speak for itself. Let my soul drive what I do, and let my hands stay clean, and let us challenge and drive Africa, because this is a place where most people call Africa. We call it home. And we got to make home to be as beautiful and as decent as the people that live in it.
I have to ask you, I know I have to run up soon, but I really have to ask you this question. I see so many young entrepreneurs want to do, and they see you being successful and they just want to be, and they try everything, and you see them fail. How painful is it for you when you see that kind of method, when people try to, skip life and try to rush and just assume that your life is so easy? How painful is that for you to watch?
It makes my blood boil. It makes me angry. It makes me angry because talent, I always say I'm the dumbest person in my office. We got so many smart people around me, and I'm looking at them and I'm saying, brother, you're so smart, but you're getting this wrong. Brother, you're so smart. It comes with one thing, and the painful nature of what business is and how hard it is. You cannot believe what it takes when someone says, I tried this so hard for 6 months and 1 year and 3 years and 4 years, and it's not moving. Don't be dogmatic, be pragmatic, be a realist, be willing to change the game, and willing to say, cut deals. I wrote a book about deals. I go in, sometimes I would take on a big matter, and I look at the whole game and say, okay, I'm a realist, let's cut a deal. I might not get what I want, but the other guy will not get what he wants. We both actually stay friends, and we continue working on other things. And with a lot of young people, that is the most difficult thing. And I think, and I'm happy you raised this, what we're trying to do at the African Energy Chamber is pull Africans and Americans and Europeans and Asians who have been successful, and take young people and say, maybe you should talk to them. Maybe you should have a conversation with them. Don't just go in there and talk to them and say, oh, this is what I'm trying to do, this is what I'm trying to do. And I see a lot of young people coming to me, and they focus on trying to convince me to believe on their ideas. Stop. Go into that meeting and say, I want to know about your failures. I want to know about your regrets. I want to know about your lowest points. I want to know what gets you going instead, what makes you want to defy the odds. I want to know how you really did this with your accounting and all of those things. You ask them those poignant questions and listen to them. I've seen a lot of people just flip it on me. You come in, you say, hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm awesome, I'm awesome, I'm awesome. And then when I ask you how much you have in the bank, well, I'm still waiting for my first sale to come in. No, you should be able to capture the experiences of those who've been successful, the steps they took, their mistakes, their failure. Because you know what? I want you to learn about my failures, because it tells you you don't have to go that route. I want you to learn that I was the kid in school who got into the fights. I was the kids who got knocked up by the government, sometimes got knocked up by prosecutors. But then, beautiful story, I got back up. I knew that if I don't pick myself back up, I'm going to be stuck. I'm going to be a statistic as a black man. I'll be a statistic. He said, there they go, another one. But then what drove me, I want you to have a conversation on me. What drove me to get back up? What drove me to say, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to finish my degree. I don't care what you think about me. I'm going to go get that law degree. I don't care what you think about me. Oh, by the way, it's business now. I'm going to go get that MBA. I don't care what you think about me. And guess what? I'm coming for you, the big guy. I am going to compete with you. But guess what? I am going to get in your companies. I'm going to learn. I'm going to stay loyal. You might not agree with me. I don't agree with your views, but I'm going to let you guys mentor me. See it every time. And I tell the young brothers, they are so quick to want to be on the show. I mean, I had a young man walk with me. He was more crazy about trying to be on TV and on the news than trying to get his job done. And then, so now it becomes more about style over substance. And when you don't do that, you don't build your substance, you don't build your grit, and stay loyal with discipline and being able to have that core that you can overcome pain. You can overcome the difficult times. Build that network around you, that when things don't go well, you have somebody you can lean on. When you do that, you build that around you. Trust me, you would always have a business. My business, some of the best advisors I've had, they're not lawyers. It's just regular people. I'll call someone like Kola Karim and I'll say, Kola, it's not going well. What do you think? I would sit with Prince Eze from Nigeria. I would sit with Case Lawal, and they would give me, young man, this is what you do. I would call a Jude Kearney in the United States or a Danny Hogan in Houston, and they would guide me and say, you go this way. And some people whom you never felt they were going to be allies. I call a friend from Russia, Dmitry. He's half drunk all the time, but he would sit there, even in his drunkenness, he would still be philosophical. You need to be able, And sometimes when I'm dealing with African ministers, I call somebody whom I think is a friend and a brother, like Gabriel Lima. And I'll say, Excellency, I don't understand this stuff. And he'll go up there, this minister, we think like this. You need to. And I just got friends whom they know name. They don't have, nobody knows them. But I'll just call them and say, what do you think? And they would give me some of the best. I mean, in my office, I got a young man called Mikhail. He will give you some of the most brutally on, and he'll look at you and tell you, and I don't think you did your hair so good. And that was just be honest. And you be like,
honest, yeah.
When he just give it to you as it is, or you turn to a Sebastian Wagner, or you turn to maybe my accountant like, Streisand or even Werner. You need that. Create a space for people to look at you in the eye and tell you the truth. One of the things in Africa we make a mistake is that we start looking good and we build a bubble and we build a box and we don't really drive our businesses. For me, it has really helped me to let people be. I'm not a boss. My kids don't call me the boss, that's for sure. But definitely my employees and everybody, my colleagues, the boss. I'm what I call a friend boss. Like you really want to have an open interaction with them. And yes, of course, you're going to have people abuse it, but you want to keep it open. You want to make it work because that is how you're going to drive it. And guess what? When they come at you, that is who you'll be able to lean on to help you cross the difficult times. Because definitely in this industry that we are, when you start making strides and you start taking on the big guys and you start breaking barriers, I mean, we have a big thing on women getting in. I'm a man. I don't have a clue what it takes for women to make it in the workplace. I don't have a clue what it is I can go in a smoke-filled room, light up a cigar with the guys and talk up deals and talk trash. By the time we're done, he says, hey man, you come see at 9 o'clock tomorrow. Most women can. I don't know what it takes for most women to sit in that office and have people talk, instead of talking about their intelligence or their smartness, they talk about their looks and their shape and everything. I don't know what it takes to walk in and not being seen as somebody who is going to change this company, but being seen as a sex object. I don't know what it takes for somebody to walk in a room and get harassed and get treated so bad, and then they can't even talk because they're worried about the blowback and what is going to happen and everything. But they still got to get in every day and say, I got to deliver. I got to try to smile in the face of pain. I got to try to defy, and I got to still drive this. I don't want to be seen as weak. I don't want this industry to look at me and say, I'm not paving the way and everything. You want to talk about pain? You want to talk about breaking barriers? You talk about that? Look at the oil and gas industry and look at the road into it, and look at how we have failed in not being able to drive it forward and really implement those child safety issues in the workplace, creating a way that if somebody is pregnant and they have to go on mat leave, they can come back and work and can nurse their babies while at work, and getting the right kind of health care, the right kind of promotion beyond just a soft issue like HR, but really creating that. So you before you go out there as a young man or a young woman, gloating and being all thinking that you're the best, take a look at the African woman in the oil and gas industry and look at those who are there and say, how do you do it? When you look at that strength, we look at that story, and you will be able to retell yourself of a new story on how you can succeed in business. I profited from that by looking at women in this industry and looking at their stories, and then it tells me how privileged I am, but also how weak I am, and how I see strong people stand in front of me daily that don't have that opportunity that I have. But then what do? You can accept it for what it is or work to change it.
Absolutely.
That we need to work to change it. And if you build a business around that kind of narrative, I think, I'm a man of faith. I believe that there's some kind of righteous wind that's going to blow behind our backs and really drive us to really get through this. And even when you get pain, even when you get people cheat you in business or you don't get what you want, there's always a righteous wind in our back, because we are people that we are destined to be successful. We just have to drive ourselves and be successful.
That is amazing. Now, NJ, this is literally the end of it, because you summarized it. You summarized that message. I was going to ask you to final question was what your message of hope will be to the government, but I think you really incorporated all of that in your final words. But before we go, do you have a final message of hope that you would give anyone out there listening that's going to listen to the show?
Stay strong. During this time, prepare. Preparations prevent frustration. We are going to recover from this pandemic and from this crash. We as Africans, we've gone through slavery, we recovered. We've gone through colonization, we recovered. We've gone through dictatorships, we've recovered. And we are destined to be there and go forward. Now that challenge is us to fight for that economic liberation and really drive beyond this time. And thank you so much for giving me a platform.
Thank you so much for joining me.
A country boy like me, so it gives a lot of hope that we still get a chance to hang out with.
Oh no, absolutely! Thank you so much. I'm really honored you came on, because I know it's always difficult with your schedule, but I am absolutely delighted you said yes, and your message is so encouraging, and I'm sure the young people watching it will feel inspired. Thank you.
Thank you, boss. Thank you.
Thank you. More boss.